The Battle of Liaoyang was the first major land battle of the Russo-Japanese War. On the outskirts of the city of Liaoyang in present-day Liaoning Province, China, the city was of great strategic importance as the major Russian military center for southern Manchuria, and a major population center on the main line on the South Manchurian Railway connecting Port Arthur with Mukden. The city was fortified by the Imperial Russian Army with 3 lines of fortifications. Background: when the Imperial Japanese Army landed on the Liaodong Peninsula, Japanese General Oyama Iwao divided his forces. The IJA Third Army under Lieutenant General Nogi Mereski was assigned to attack the Russian naval base at Port Arthur to the south, while the IJA First Army, IJA Second Army and IJA Fourth Army would converge on the city of Liaoyang. Russian General Alexei Kuropatkin planned to counter the Japanese advance with a series of planned withdrawals, intended to trade territory for the time necessary for enough reserves to arrive from Russia to give him a decisive numerical advantage over the Japanese. However, this strategy was not in favor with the Russian Viceroy Yevgeny Ivanovich Alexeyev, who was pushing for a more aggressive stance and quick victory over Japan. Both sides viewed Liaoyang as a site suitable for a decisive battle which would decide the outcome of the war. Preparations. At Liaoyang, Kuropatkin had a total of 14 divisions with 158,000 men, supported by 609 artillery pieces. He divided his forces into 3 groups. The Eastern Group was commanded by General Alexander von Bildling and consisted of the 3rd Siberian Army Corps and the 10th European Army Corps. The Southern Group was commanded by General Nikolai Zarubov and consisted of the 1st Siberian Army Corps, 2nd Siberian Army Corps and 4th Siberian Army Corps, together with a total of 11 cavalry squadrons under Lieutenant General Pavel Mishchenko. Kuropatkin kept a reserve of 30 battalions, mostly from the 17th Siberian Army Corps. His outermost offensive line extended approximately 12 miles to the south of the ancient walled city. With the start of rainy season in July, the muddy terrain favored the defenders. Oyama had also divided his forces into 3 groups. IJA First Army under General Kurokai Tamemoto, the IJA Second Army under General Okuyasu Kata and the IJA Fourth Army under General Mizumichi Tsura. Oyama had a total of 8 divisions with 120,000 men and 170 artillery pieces. The overall Japanese strategy, which had been developed by General Kodama Gentaro, was to have the Second Army advance along the railway line, while the First Army converged on the city via Motion Pass from the north. The Fourth Army would be a reserve to be committed to the right of the Second Army towards the end of the battle. Due to a disparity in military intelligence, Kuropatkin was convinced that he was outnumbered, whereas Oyama, with the assistance of the local Chinese population, had precise knowledge of the Russian strength and deployment. However, Oyama was concerned with his numerical inferiority, and waited to attack in hopes that a quick victory at Port Arthur would enable him to add the strength of IJA Third Army to his forces before yet more Russian reinforcements arrived to the north. However, after 3 weeks without progress at Port Arthur, Oyama decided that he could wait no longer. Battle. The battle began on the 25th of August with a Japanese artillery barrage, followed by the advance of the Japanese Imperial Guards Division under Lieutenant General Hasegawa Yoshimichi against the right flank of the 3rd Siberian Army Corps. The attack was defeated by the Russians under General Bildling largely due to the superior weight of the Russian artillery, and the Japanese took over 1,000 casualties. On the night of the 25th of August, the IJA 2nd Division and IJA 12th Division under Major General Matsunaga Masatoshi engaged the 10th Siberian Army Corps to the east of Liaoyang. Fierce night fighting occurred around the slopes of a mountain called Pico, which fell to the Japanese by the evening of the 26th of August. Kuropatkin ordered a retreat under the cover of heavy rain and fog, to the outermost defensive line surrounding Liaoyang, which he had reinforced with his reserves. Also on the 26th of August, the advance of the IJA Second Army and IJA Fourth Army was stalled. Russian General Zurubov before the outmost defensive line to the south. However, on the 27th of August, much to the surprise of the Japanese and consternation of his commanders, Kuropatkin did not order a counterattack, but instead ordered that the outer defense perimeter be abandoned, and that all Russian forces should pull back to the second defensive line. This line was approximately 7 miles south of Liaoyang, and included several small hills which had been heavily fortified, most notably a 210-meter-tall hill known to the Russians as Cairn Hill. The shorter lines were easier for the Russians to defend, but played into Oyama's plans to encircle and destroy the Russian Manchurian army. Oyama ordered Kurikai to the north, where he cut the railroad line and the Russian escape route, while Oku and Nazu were ordered to prepare for a direct frontal assault to the south. The next phase of the battle began on the 30th of August with a renewed Japanese offensive on all fronts. However, again due to superior artillery and their extensive fortifications, the Russians repulsed the attacks on the 30th of August and the 31st of August, causing considerable losses to the Japanese. Again to the consternation of his generals, Kuropatkin would not authorize a counter-attack. Kuropatkin continued to overestimate the size of the attacking forces, and would not agree to commit to his reserve forces to the battle. On the 1st of September, the Japanese Second Army had taken Cairn Hill and approximately half of the Japanese First Army had crossed the Taesu River about 8 miles east of the Russian lines. Kuropatkin then decided to abandon his strong defensive line, and made an orderly retreat to the innermost of the 3 defensive lines surrounding Liaoyang. This enabled the Japanese forces to advance to a position where they were within range to shell the city, including its crucial railway station. This prompted Kuropatkin to at last authorize a counter-attack, with the aim of destroying the Japanese forces across the Taesu River and securing a hill known to the Japanese as Manjuyama, to the east of the city. Kurikai had only 2 complete divisions to the east of the city, and Kuropatkin decided to commit the entire 1st Siberian Army Corps and 10th Siberian Army Corps and 13 battalions under Major General N.V. Orlov against him. However, the messenger sent by Kuropatkin with orders got lost, and Orlov's outnumbered men panicked at the sight of the Japanese divisions. Meanwhile, the 1st Siberian Army Corps under General George E. Stackelberg arrived on the afternoon of the 2nd of September, exhausted by a long march through the mud and torrential rains. When Stackelberg asked General Mishchenkov for assistance from 2 brigades of his Cossacks, Mishchenkov claimed to have orders to go elsewhere and abandoned him. The night assault of Japanese forces on Manjuyama was initially successful, but in the confusion, 3 Russian regiments fired upon each other, and by morning the hill was back in Japanese hands. Meanwhile, on the 3rd of September, Kuropatkin received a report from General Zurubiev on the inner defensive line that he was running short on ammunition. This report was quickly followed by a report by Stackelberg that his troops were too tired to continue the counter-attack. When a report arrived that the Japanese First Army was poised to cut off Liaoyang from the north, Kuropatkin then decided to abandon the city, and to regroup at Mukden, a further 65 kilometers to the north. The retreat began on the 3rd of September and was completed by the 10th of September. Aftermath. Despite Oyama's goal of encircling and annihilating the Russian forces in Manchuria at Liaoyang, Kuropatkin was able to retreat in good order as the exhausted Japanese were unable to pursue. On the 7th of September, Kuropatkin informed St. Petersburg that he had won a great victory over the Japanese by avoiding encirclement and inflicting great losses. However, Russian War Minister Viktor Sakharov ridiculed the report. Celebrations in Tokyo were muted by the heavy casualty reports, and the knowledge that their victory was not complete as the decisive battle of the war would need to be fought elsewhere. Officially, 5,537 Japanese and 3,611 Russian were killed, and 18,063 Japanese and 14,301 Russian wounded. Soviet studies later asserted that the Russian armies suffered about 15,548 casualties against 23,615 total Japanese casualties. Gallery. Russian forces were supported by observers in a variety of balloons, providing aerial monitoring of the unfolding battle. Battle of Liaoyang, Russian crew of balloon handlers on the ground. Battle of Liaoyang, Russian balloon anchored between missions. Battle of Liaoyang, Russian observation balloon in mid-air. Battle of Liaoyang, Russian balloon observers in the basket.